In this interview, I spoke with the Star Atlas CEO, Michael Wagner, and we covered most, if not all, of the questions that I've seen in the comments from my previous Star Atlas video and then the live stream that I did. And then we went in depth into what it will actually be like playing the game and working inside the Metaverse. We covered their development timeline, drawing some comparisons to Star Citizen and some other games in the space genre, since I had several questions and comments about that. We talked about the other uses of the Metaverse separate from gaming, mainly focusing on education and business, and we covered what kind of assets are needed to start playing the minigame. This was a long interview, and I wanted to trim it down to be under 30 minutes, but there's so much good information, so I just left it mostly intact. But feel free to use the timestamps below and jump around to the topics that interest you. And then while you're down there, be sure to like the video and subscribe with the bell notification, as always. Michael, thank you for coming on the channel.
Hey Josh, thanks for having me, man. Great to be here.
So today I do have some questions that some community members have had. I'm sure you've answered them, but then I think for the majority of our talk, I want to just kind of have a casual conversation about Star Atlas, about what it's going to be like once we actually get in there and start using it, playing it.
Absolutely, man. Happy to talk more about the Metaverse, about Star Atlas, and we're very active in responding to community questions. So let's take it away.
Awesome. Let's just start. I'm sure there are some people maybe that aren't familiar with it, so you just want to start in how you would describe Star Atlas.
Yeah, I'll keep it, just high level, but Star Atlas is a space genre, massively multiplayer online game. It kind of centers around gameplay pillars that include space exploration, territory control, political domination, and it's this grand strategy game that players can engage in and also earn financial rewards from. So this is a GameFi or blockchain-based game. What really differentiates us, though, is that we are building out to a higher quality standard than what is the norm or what is standard, or really what we've seen in blockchain gaming to date. And so I think it's important that we touch on the fact that we're building out in Unreal Engine 5, and what this is going to deliver for us is a cinematic quality gaming experience that's hyper realistic and feels very similar to operating within physical reality, within the real world, except in a gaming environment. And so the methods that we use, though, to enhance that experience and provide value to the player are those blockchain mechanics that include things like NFT ownership. So true fundamental ownership of assets that you possess within the game environment. Two crypto native assets, Atlas and Polis. Atlas is transactional. It's kind of the operating currency of the universe. It is what allows people to operate equipment, purchase consumables, pay land value tax, but it's also the reward mechanism. So it's kind of the inflationary or emissionary denomination that players are rewarded in while playing Star Atlas. And then there's Polis, and Polis is our take. It is the Star Atlas DAO, and that provides governance rights to our player base. And so we have quite an extensive hierarchical DAO structure throughout the game. We did actually just release our game economics and tokenomic white paper back on the 17th of August, so a little over a week ago. And it outlines this in detail, but in effect, there is the external DAO, which guides and drives things like long-term development decision-making. It also provides players with the ability to capture some of the revenue from the Metaverse. It manages things like in-game economy, so asset release schedules, inflation schedules, also feature releases and feature requests from players, and generally a high degree of governance rights over the external perspective of Star Atlas, the game. But within the game, there's also faction DAOs and then regional DAOs, and also our clan system, which we call decentralized autonomous corporations. There will be DAOs at the local level as well. And so that, what we're trying to do here is provide a tool set for players to manage things like treasury and also kind of the political strategy of the game through the implementation of these features. And then the final component of Star Atlas is how we're integrating DeFi into day-to-day gaming. And this would include things like participating in lending pools or liquidity pools, automated market making, doing some yield farming. And the real idea behind that concept was that we could enable players to earn residual income off of some of the earnings that they generate from gameplay, right? So it's this kind of very immersive high quality three-dimensional universe that players also have the ability to monetize based on spending time and managing resources within the game.
And we have all these assets that you're going to be creating with the 2 tokens and with all the NFTs. And you mentioned using DeFi. Are there going to be interfaces within the game to use DeFi?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we're essentially building, what could be considered the equivalent of like a stock exchange, right? At various space stations, and even enabling players through some of the assets that they can create, in particular, the orbital space stations, where they can construct trading decks and trading platforms on their space station, allowing other players to come in there and execute certain activities. And what's really cool is, through the creation of these platforms, which would include things like hangar bays and refinery deck, a social deck. You could have like taverns, bars, restaurants, social centers, but also, fueling stations and things like this. The player is actually able to monetize the creation of those as well. So not only is there this enjoyable gameplay crafting loop that, that the user will engage in, but when other players come and utilize their assets, and if they're given permission to, then that player gets to extract some of the revenue from the value exchange in some format. And so the DeFi functionality will be integrated directly into the UI. You won't have to go external to do it. And the idea, once again, is that we can permit these players to compound earnings that they've made through gameplay, as opposed to, say, extracting them from the game, liquidating them, and depositing them in a bank account, should they even have one, wherein it's earning essentially zero return. Checking and savings accounts nowadays earn absolutely nothing. And in some economies, we see negative yielding interest rates, which means you're actually paying to store cash in a bank, right? And so obviously we understand all of the complexities of things like DeFi and how powerful that is for anybody who's actively using it. And so those are the tools that we want to provide to our players.
I think that's a really good way to go about it, because if people are truly going to be going into Star Atlas, and some people aren't even going to be playing the game, they're just going to be going in there to be a trader or to work because they can't find work in the real world. So having a mechanism where they can compound that within the game will also kind of help prevent bleeding of liquidity out of the game.
It's true, and I mean, also while there will be some educational requirements to get a lot of these new people from all over the world who have never interacted with crypto to understand how it works, but it's kind of like, maybe to make an analogy, if you were working in Germany or working somewhere in Latin America that has a currency that's not native to you, it's their national domestic currency, but you need to spend in that currency, then naturally you'd want to be paid in that as well, right? It doesn't make a lot of sense to get paid in some currency that you can't use natively. And so all of our players are natively getting paid in Atlas cryptographic assets, and so it's really seamless and frictionless for us to provide the tools for them then to take those native assets and maximize their yield off of it.
I want to talk a little bit about the development process and the development timeline of this. I know a lot of people draw a parallel to Star Citizen. It was a Kickstarter project. They started development back in 2011 or something like that, and then they had their Kickstarter in 2012, and there's still not really much that's playable. So I think a lot of people have questions of, one, is there any inspiration from Star Citizen? And two, what you expect from the development timeline?
I mean, there are some parallels, and the biggest of which is really just the genre that we're operating in. I guess, was there inspiration or influence? Probably, but the reality is the entire founding leadership team, we're all big gamers anyway, and we've been playing space exploration games for as long as we can remember. In fact, the chief product officer, Danny Floyd, was working at EA during the creation of Earth and Beyond in 2003, right, which was really the first space MMO that came out. So I've played EVE Online. That's another big point of inspiration. And if anything, we have kind of a complex economic system within the game that would be maybe comparable to EVE Online. But anytime a game is being created, or anything is being created for that matter, there is some influence from all of our historical reference points. And so we weren't out to try to duplicate or replicate what Star Citizen's doing. There are a number of differences, and the primary of which is that Star Citizen is also very much focused on space sim, so kind of creating like very, very in-depth reality. And we're not necessarily going to the lengths that they're going. So we're not really considering ourselves space sim, although it is hyper realistic in graphical fidelity. The other thing is, so Star Citizen also developed out, and I don't want to make this a comparison just against Star Citizen, but where we are able to derive some efficiencies is that we selected Unreal Engine 5 as our game engine. This is going to create a much faster path to development execution than having to start an engine from scratch. So again, that's kind of the route that Star Citizen took. Now, with that said, though, and whatever arguments could be made about the deliverables on Star Citizen, we are maybe similar in the sense that in reality, in my mind, this is a game that is never intended to be complete. Now, I will caveat that because we're effectively building out, gameplay mechanics, and those will be, relatively polished sometime in say, 3 to 5 years. We think is probably an accurate timeline, maybe a little bit longer. But the metaverse itself is almost a living, breathing organism that's public utility over time as we move into fully decentralized state, which is to say that players from all over the world, individuals, creators, entrepreneurs, they're all going to have an opportunity to influence the future path and evolution of the metaverse. And so to that end, it's this, I don't see this as a product that's going to live for, take 7 years to build and then live for 10 years. It's a product that will, it will take a certain timeline for us to kind of fully deliver it, but then it can live on in perpetuity. It could live on for hundreds of years or thousands of years if this becomes the de facto digital environment that people, prefer to operate within. And if we're successful in creating this sustainable economy that we're targeting. So, from that standpoint, we're not, I don't think that Star Atlas will ever be done per se, but yeah, the gameplay mechanics, we're targeting a 3 to 5 year timeline. We have some advantages in using the engine that we've selected. And I mean, the team is just, we're cranking out content. I mean, if for the people that have been following us since January, which is when we formally announced, you will see pretty amazing progress across every department, from the engineering team, the launch of our NFT marketplace, the launch of the Rebirth digital art campaign, as well as just some amazing concept art, some very nice 3D models that we've pushed out. And we do have a full production team right now that's working in UE5. And we believe that there's a chance we could deliver the initial game content by the end of this year, actually, sometime in December. This is where I'd like to point out another major differentiation is we're also not holding the entire game back until it's done. We're actually releasing in an iterative state. And so, the first version of this for us is actually in browser. It's a in-browser mini game, as we're calling it. And this will allow players to actually deploy their assets right away. And they can start generating revenue from that. And this version of the game will include things like ship missions, ship configuration, land ownership, mining. And mining land is another crafting loop wherein you're extracting ore, using that ore to or refining that ore, ultimately using that as a material input for the crafting of new NFTs. So there will be a blueprint with the items you need. And if you collect all those items, then you're able to mint your own NFT, and you can either use that asset or turn around and sell it on the marketplace. And then it also gets into orbital space stations and also the namesake of the game, where we have this three-dimensional interactive map of the universe, the Star Atlas. So that's kind of the first part, but concurrently we're working on Unreal Engine, and every few months, maybe 6 months, we'll be rolling out new feature sets that include things like racing modules, battle arenas, social experiences that could just be a concert, right? And so, yes, the whole game, the game won't be complete by that point, but we'll always be delivering new experiences and new points of interaction for the players.
Yeah, and that's good. That touched on another question that I've seen going around quite a lot is like, with this long developmental period, how are you going to maintain interest? So by starting with the mini game and then having these other modules that come out, where I think it'll have these little boosts of excitement and interest from each time those things are released.
Yeah, and so the mini game gameplay should also be robust, and keep in mind that there is a fairly considerable incentive for the player to engage with us because there's actually these monetary rewards associated with gameplay. We want the mini game to be fun. It's not just, we don't want this to look or feel just like a DeFi protocol, stake your coins and start getting something in return. There's actually actions that you have to take and missions you can complete and decision trees that you'll have to follow. And based on your selection or strategy, the outcome will differ. And so, that should all still be fun. But in the meantime, the big picture is really this immersive world that we're working on.
Okay, I have a question that I really liked from one of my comments on my YouTube video, and he said that, would you be interested in adding a world that students could access, like a specific planet that students could access, similar to the Ready Player One book? I don't know if you read the book, but they have one planet for education exclusively.
We would be completely open to that. This kind of gets more into the discussion of bigger strategy and opportunity related to the metaverse. Once again, these social experiences, social interaction, but also what is being created is this employment model, right? And I won't take this too far on a tangent, but I've been discussing a lot recently how some players might not be able to purchase assets that they need to get into the game. We're going to have a pretty wide range of asset values that start anywhere from $5 or $10 and go all the way up to millions of dollars that you can own. And so not everybody's going to be able to afford everything. And maybe somebody can't even buy that cheapest asset. But what could happen is capital flows in, it purchases a portfolio of assets, and then it hires a team of people to go navigate space and actually play the game for them. We're talking to a lot of venture capital, and that's kind of the direction that they're going with the game assets is, they're building portfolios to generate returns. And they don't necessarily want to go in and play the game, but they see the potential, right, of what can happen in this universe. And so it just becomes another business, and people get employed to actually perform functions. And quite likely, it creates a greater equality in standard of living and wages across countries all over the world, because we eliminate the friction of geographic borders. So, but all that being said, there is very well an opportunity to create universities and schools and a platform for education, a platform for meetings where people just get to pop in. They don't have any assets, they don't actually play the game, but they're operating in a virtual environment that's very beautiful, it's attractive, and a lot can be accomplished in call it digital format, just like us right now, talking on Zoom. We could just as easily be, in a year talking inside Star Atlas.
I think, when we're first talking about this, it's kind of, you talk about it as if it's a game that people are going to go into play, but in reality, it's more, that's just the first part of it to get people in there. But then people also realize that it's going to be almost every aspect that we do in the real world will then be done in these metaverses.
100%. Yeah. And I do think that while there's no real clear definition of what a metaverse is, I do think that it is essentially the next evolution of the web at large. I think it's going to be incredibly disruptive and displace e-commerce and the way people shop today. Because once again, you could go into a Nike shop inside Star Atlas and truly interact with a pair of digital shoes that look like shoes you'd receive, make your payment with digital currency in a totally frictionless, borderless format, and have those shoes delivered to your physical house. And, at the same time, if they're running a promotion, maybe you get the NFT that's a replica of the shoes you just bought, and you can equip them on your avatar. And so, this is true of just about any form of commerce. Once we can fully enable that and allow for payments to merchants from all over the world, then, it essentially eliminates any need to even go into a physical store to shop anymore.
Yeah, and we're already pretty far in that direction, so it's only going to get sped up.
For sure.
So
yeah.
I want to talk, you've mentioned a couple times the assets that you'll need in order to first play the game. What kind of assets are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few primary asset classes, but by and large it's ships, and then within the ships you'll have crew members, and you'll have components and modules. And, these are things like weapon systems and shields. The crew members are naturally like crew cards that you can equip on your ship. Or alternatively, if you don't want to equip the crew cards, you and members of your team or some of your friends can actually all pilot a ship together. So that's one asset class. The land is another one. So virtual real estate. And on that real estate, a variety of buildings or structures that you can place. The predominant gameplay loop right now is oriented towards that mining and ore extraction from planets and from asteroids and things like that. But in the future, there will be human habs, like habitats. There will be condos and penthouses, and there will be retail shops and industrial centers where people are just, these are all processing facilities. So to your exact point, essentially all of the functions that business performs in reality today will also exist as some form of business or structure in the metaverse. The last major piece would be orbital space stations. And this is people that operate their own space station. They can place it somewhere strategic and build out the platforms around it and continue to expand and grow their space station over time. And, operating a space station is in and of itself essentially operating a business. And one of your primary motivations would be to attract players. Now you can utilize it yourself if you need to create a refinery, or you want storage facility, or you want a place to park your ship. That's all optional for you to create that just for yourself. But alternatively, you could be a provider to other people that are looking for those same services who don't own a space station.
Now, when you're talking about land ownership, I'm curious. It's there's no skybox, so it's virtually limitless how big this is. Is it going to be a situation where people kind of just start off in the center of the universe, and that's kind of where the most valuable land and most of the action's happening, and then you kind of go outward from there?
Yeah, I mean, it's not far off. So we have this 3-faction system in the game with kind of 3 different races of people, Mud being humans, Oni being like a series of alien races, and then Ooster is our android, futuristic android type race. And so amongst the borders of these 3 factions are kind of constantly warring, and they're malleable, right? So they're expanding and contracting over time, depending on where players are trying to initiate an attack or defend. But really at the center of each of the factions is a central space station where everybody lands. And this is actually a neutral zone, or like a safe space where you can't be attacked. There's no PvP. You can't be attacked by other players. There's no PvP, but there will be PvE experiences that you engage in. But then there's 2 additional security zones of medium risk where you can get attacked by players, but there's still a respawn upon death. And then there's our high risk zone, deep space, which is the highest risk place you can operate, but also accompanied with the highest rewards. Now in deep space, it's effectively hardcore mode, right? So if you lose an engagement out there, you're actually going to lose your asset. The function is your asset goes into an escrow account via smart contract when you enter deep space. And if you lose, then that asset gets burned, it gets destroyed, and the other player is able to capture or salvage some of the components from your ship. So all of the best minerals and resources and value actually do live at the center of the universe, but it's in this high risk zone. So I would expect to see a high degree of competitive gameplay and battling going on there, because the rewards will be substantial.
Do you also expect to see a diamond the size of a planet there?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I was wondering about that from the teaser trailer, if it's an actual thing that people can go to, or if it's just kind of, or I don't know. I'm sure it's a teaser, so they're kind of keeping cards close to the chest still.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm happy to kind of elaborate a little bit on it. And it's, for those of you that were, or for anyone that was following us along with the Rebirth campaign, that was the digital art multimedia meta poster campaign. We were revealing lore over time every week when we revealed a new poster. So the first of those was Discovery of Iris, and that's kind of like the genesis of how this universe formed. And Discovery of Iris was the planet that is this hyper dense, mineral rich planet that everybody's targeting. And that's actually how all of the factions formed, because they were all going after this at the same time.
If these factions are all warring, and you're saying that the borders are kind of malleable, and you also said that there's a neutral zone in the center, so it's not like one of these factions could ever be entirely taken out, but they could basically be pushed to the limit of those borders where it is neutral?
To some extent, but it might not fully fleshed out, and it's not like you could most likely would not be able to push through the medium risk zone, And there would be some limitation to the amount that the border could be pushed back, but yeah, no faction will be eliminated. And just to be clear, there is a central space station at the center of every faction core, and so that it's kind of a triangular system, a rock paper scissors, where certain factions have advantages in some ways, but disadvantages in other ways. And so there's always somebody who can kind of outcompete you, but they can likewise get outcompeted by somebody else.
Yeah, and I've seen that there's quite a lot of different careers that you could choose from, and so somebody could maybe try to, I don't know, be more broad in how they do it. However, it seems like the more specialized you'll get, then the more kind of rewards you could get that are related to that, I would assume. So if you have like these guilds, these decentralized autonomous corporations, it's probably likely that they'll have individuals that have specializations because of that.
Exactly right. So, I think I mentioned something to that effect earlier this week, even on one of the live streams. But being the generalist could still be enjoyable gameplay, and somebody can still participate in Star Atlas as a generalist. But we think that the most efficient clans, guilds, players will identify those players and direct those players in directions that are going to maximize the yield for the organization or for the collective, right? And that also goes all the way up to the faction level, where it's possible that through the faction-based governance system that there's a job posting board, and the faction DAO, which has its own treasury based on all of the taxes generated from those units below it, puts a job posting board out that says we need security patrols, right? And so who wants to take this position? And then somebody's going to take that job and spend time doing that because they can earn money from the faction DAO for doing it. But it could also mean we need more miners, right? Our faction is ready to produce a mega structure, and we need people extracting this ore for us. And so it's going to be this very dynamic economy in the game, and we could see people's actions being kind of redirected based on the needs of the whole.
Yeah, and that'll all be kind of market-based, so just like it is here, where it's kind of whatever jobs are the most difficult or the least amount of people want to do them will probably pay more because of it.
Supply and demand, right? So what we're doing is we're very efficiently matching labor to productivity.
If you have a giant spaceship, what could you do to monetize that?
There's any number of things. Some of the larger ships will even have like venues for players, right? So we, like, once again, defaulting back to the social experience component of it, if you have a concert hall, it would even be possible for that asset owner to source some external talent. Maybe they're getting a DJ or a performer to come in and perform in their venue, and then they're selling tickets to other players to actually come in and see this performance, right? So it becomes just a standard music venue that they're able to monetize. Of course, depending on the class of the ship or what it's spec'd in, they would be able to go out and do mining operations. They'd be able to go out and engage in battle. They could be support vehicles for other ships. They could carry fleets of ships into areas and deploy those fleets. They could become storage facilities. They could also become production facilities for more NFTs. And naturally, the size of, say, asset that you want to be able to mint is going to require some facility that's larger than that, so that it becomes the shipyard for the creation of assets.
Right. Yeah, it's so wild. It's such a crazy world to think about being in. Are you guys doing stuff with VR?
Well, we are building an Unreal Engine, which will natively have support for VR. We're not really putting out any statements about what that will look like right at this stage, because by the time we really get into full production where that becomes available, the technology is probably going to change. Danny, our chief product officer, would be able to answer that a little more intelligently than I could, because he has a better fundamental understanding of how the tech works. But I think that there are some limitations in current tech that aren't as attractive for us to develop around it immediately. But we think these will be overcome in the years to follow.
I agree. I'm kind of waiting for the next generation of VR headsets to get one.
Yeah.
And then also another question that I had is, which game consoles it'll be available on, but it's kind of the same thing. In that amount of time, it's going to be the next generation of consoles, and we have just no idea what those are even going to look like.
Well, so there's that, and there's also the simple fact that you know, we are transforming the distribution model, and we're not working with a publisher, right? We're really trying to create and share value directly with all of the stakeholders. That means anybody who works with the company, obviously the equity holders in our company, but the gamers as well, and the token holders and the asset holders. We want to redistribute out the value to all of those various stakeholders and kind of bypassing the entire publisher model. So yet to be determined what the distribution channels will look like for us going into the future. And some of that is difficult to determine in any case, simply because of these unique financial mechanics that we're building out for. So it might always be a direct to consumer, but the potential or ability for us to port that into a next gen gaming console would exist. It's just a question of whether or not it would be available on there based on whatever the terms and conditions of those platforms are.
Sure, I'm sure they have all kinds of requirements that they have.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to share with everybody before we wrap up?
It's been a really, really busy month for us. I've referenced the economic paper. That was a really big piece that we pushed out. So it goes in depth into all of the tokenomics, how value accrues to assets, what the gameplay mechanics are, and some kind of entry level information about what type of gameplay you'll be able to engage in. So that's on our website. We also just launched a brand new website yesterday, along with the cinematic teaser trailer. And we're getting amazing reviews on both. The website's really cool. That was 4 or 5 months in the making. The trailer was about the same. And really excited about that. So if you haven't seen it, definitely go take a look at staratlas.com. And a lot of big stuff to come. The TGE is closing out. The Galactic Asset offering is going to be kicking off early in September, and that will be the first opportunity to buy ships and land and other assets directly from us. And beyond that, we have a rapidly growing community in Discord. I think somewhere around 25,000 right now. So a lot of information there as well. So if anyone in the community has questions, if we're not able to respond quickly enough, a lot of these community members are jumping in and helping out. But guilds or clans are also forming there as well. Corporations are forming. So if you're looking for teammates or someone to partner up with to explore the metaverse, it's just a great spot to be. So that's about it. Really exciting things coming, but I'm sure you and I will probably connect on another call at some point to discuss those as they roll out.
Yeah, and I'll have the economics paper. I highly recommend everybody read the economics paper if you haven't yet. It's excellent, and it explains a lot of the details that people had as far as questions of how all that is going to work with the economics and then the mining and production. I'm sure that was also quite a while in the making. And then the Star Atlas website and the YouTube channel, all that stuff will be linked in the description. So everybody be sure to check that out before.
Sorry, I will say one final thing here, and it's more of a precautionary to everybody because super unfortunate. It is kind of the nature of the game. We've seen this a lot in crypto, but there are a ton of scam sites out there, right? There's scam Telegram channels, scam announcement channels. People are spoofing our name, changing one character, and if you're not paying close attention, people are coming to us. They've already fallen for the scam. And so we hate to see that because it's, obviously just lost money. So just be scrupulous in any information that you're reading. Would advise if you have any questions, double check with us in Discord or Telegram, right? But just be very careful out there, and hopefully we can put a stop to some of these in any scenario where we have any kind of leverage. So.
Yeah, 100%. And, I'll put links in the description. I do not ever put links in the comments. So if there's any links in the comments of the video, even if it says it's from me, it's not me. So you got to be super vigilant in all this, especially a project that has this much attention. You can squash these scammers, but then they just keep coming back. So you got to be really careful. Yeah. Well, Michael, thank you. This is a lot of fun. I'm really excited to get on this and play the game. Appreciate you coming on the channel.
It was my pleasure. Anytime. Thank you so much, Josh. This is great.